just press stop short. You can keep it within half an hour. We don't have to prolong unless the discussion requires it.
What was that, Miriam? Muriel?
I think she's just saying something in error. I'm going to start now, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. I say we keep it within 30 minutes unless the discussion requires.
Okay, cool. When quiet.
The OneAcademy is the heart of our company. Cryptocurrency is not an easy product. It's a very innovative product based on technology and based on very, very complex concepts. For us to be part of this financial revolution, to be part of cryptocurrency and of a community, we need to understand exactly what we do and what we talk about. And this is why we have the OneAcademy. The OneAcademy provides you with concepts, provides you with explanation on cryptocurrency and on the financial world. I would encourage everybody to join the courses, to do the certificates, and to understand thoroughly how to use cryptocurrency, what cryptocurrency is, and how we can change the world by using cryptocurrency. OneAcademy. Learn today, lead tomorrow.
Dwayne, your mic is muted. Dwayne, your mic is muted.
Thank you. Greetings and welcome to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're tuning in from in internet land. My name is Dwayne KNights and I am an independent marketing associate with One Life Network. And of course, our founder, Dr. Ruja Ignatova, has said that we learn today to lead tomorrow. So we understand that OneAcademy is an innovative e-learning platform covering a broad range of topics, including financial areas such as financial analysis, asset management, Forex, the stock exchange, cryptocurrency, and much more. Our mission is to provide our students with the guidance and educational material needed to achieve financial literacy. OneAcademy has been developed by finance experts and academics. It is highly structured and easy to understand. You learn at your own pace, and you can become a part of the global financial reset. Our intention is to give you a unique sense of understanding and facts which you can use to enhance your knowledge and your daily lives as we promote our core product, the OneAcademy. So this evening, on tonight's OneAcademy Nights, we have a discussion that is going to be centered around our presenters as it relates to the bubbles. So joining me on our distinguished panel this evening is Mr. Alvin Morton. We have Wayne Wilson. We have, of course, our co-captain, Ms. Muriel Azama. And we will have other panelists who will be tuning into tonight's call to make their contribution. So kicking off the first leg of our relay discussion this evening is none other than our distinguished Toastmaster himself, Mr. Alvin Morton. It's over to you, sir.
Pleasant good evening, morning, afternoon. And thank you very much, Mr. KNights, for that very, very kind introduction. If I may, to get this discussion started, I would like to share my screen for one slide to be shown. Just one slide. And I think that is going to set the tone for this evening's session. Mr. KNights talked about bubbles. And this slide is shared from a presentation which I did back in July, I believe, wow, how time flies, nearly 3 months ago, that looked at bubbles. And it sought to document in this slide the big or major bubble bursts of all time. We are talking about the Dow Jones Industrial Average in 1929, the precious metals drop off in 1980, the 20-year bear market in 1989, Nikkei 225. In 2000, it was the internet and the NASDAQ drop off after the boom. In 2005, it was the US housing market. Then in 2008, the Great Recession. In 2011, there was a 25% drop off in the price of silver in 5 days. And in 2017, Bitcoin loss of 25% in just 1 day. Were these bubbles? And that's going to be the discussion today. But before we get opening into that, we have this chart to the right, which seeks to represent asset prices versus GDP. And in the dot-com bubble, which would have occurred in 2000, the chart refers to it as a 1-foot wave. The housing bubble was a 2-foot wave. And what transpired thereafter was considered or labeled the central banker's bubble. And that is a 4-foot wave. So what we're seeing in mathematics is called a geometric progression. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, etc. What is the relevance? What is the significance of these bubbles? And are we in fact in another situation of a bubble? And perhaps to give us some opening remarks, some follow-up commentary on that, let's hear from Muriel Lizam. Muriel is one of our distinguished educators in this platform and always has considerable input and important comments to make.
You know,
Muriel, let's hear from you.
Thank you so very much, Alvin, fondly called Dr. Morton. You know, this bubble, the issue of this bubble is so very critical in the times we are. And I really want to, there are lots of things that we can say, but I want to keep us focused on what the OneAcademy first level, almost first page, first chapter has spoke to us in respect of the bubble. Because what it tells us, and we having experienced it now, realizes it, is that many specialists says that the bursting of various bubbles in the financial sector is not merely the first stage of the crisis. It really has already started with the development of these bubbles. So, you know, whether the bursting is a remedy, which allows things to free up, the whole issue is that the bubble, it has already started before it's busted. So we have experienced a lot of these bubbles, a lot of overindulgence in sectors where we would have had the dot-com bubble, we would, as Alvin shared with you. And, you know, we are seeing that we could be forging towards a crypto bubble. And it is for significant and strong-rooted company like ours, rooted in usability, that will keep our heads above water, that will thrive, not just keep our heads above water, but will thrive when the bubble bursts. That's just my take for this point in time.
So if we can summarize some of your comments, basically what we are to understand is that the bursting of the bubble is really the late and perhaps latent part of the whole conversation. The fact of the matter is, the bubble has already begun.
Absolutely.
And having already begun is in effect the start of the trouble. Dr. KDs, as I like to say, who was gracious enough to host us this evening, I would like to get your comments on this whole question of bubbles. And following up on what Muriel Izama said, what is your take and how do you see this topic being important, particularly at this juncture of our community's development, as well as what's happening in the country at present?
Okay, so my take on it is that the bubble is inevitable. However, we do not have to be partakers of the bubble by practicing financial prudence. I say to most of my close friends and associates at this time, don't put yourself under any financial duress as it relates to overextending yourself with relation to matters of credit or indebtedness more than you can cover yourself at this point in time. The OneAcademy clearly spells out when endeavoring to get involved in a mortgage situation, make sure that you have at least 25% in hand so that you can be able to mitigate the next 75%. And that's just one instance in terms of financial prudence that the OneAcademy gives. So what I am trying to do myself as an individual right now is to stay clear of debt, DEBT, and basically to have a focus, because as you would have pointed out in several of your lectures and presentations gone by, even though the bubbles are being precipitated at this point in time, there are opportunities that are ongoing because money is made both in a bullish and a bearish market. So it's for the enlightened person to capitalize on the opportunities that exist. So to our listeners, both local and global, I'd like to say that there are opportunities in the midst of all this calamity that we seem to be taking place around us. There are still opportunities to be had, and you can position yourself by practicing financial prudence. So that's my 2 points.
And I know, Alvin, you'll go on to your next
if we may
speaker.
summarize, go ahead.
Go. No, you. Sorry, Alvin. You summarize.
So if we may summarize, okay. So if we may summarize, basically doing what you are saying is that one, there's a measure of prudence that we all need to practice and to employ. If that is to be entered into, especially that of the mortgage variety, the OneAcademy clearly says that there should be a 25% component that you should contribute personally and seek to put arrangements in place to mitigate the other 75%. And even as all of the turbulence and turmoil is going on, what we want to be able to do is to position ourselves to benefit either in the bullish component or the bearish component. And I think that is so important. I want to read something briefly from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, page 147, and it is under the chapter, The Rich Invent Money. So down to the bottom of the page, the comment that is being made is that the rich make money for it. If you can grasp the idea that money is not real, you will grow richer faster. That's this whole conversation about positioning as Dwayne just said. What is it was a question Mike and I often came back with. What is money if it is not real? And Rich Dad's answer would be what we agree it is. This is page 148, and it is something that I think early versions of the OneAcademy or typically defined money as. It is whatever we agree upon. And as this conversation begins to develop and we see particular developments taking place, we see now the Bahamas has introduced its own cryptocurrency, and now that makes it the first country in the world to have done so. And we're now seeing a rush and a race towards CBDC, central bank digital currencies. I would like to get perhaps Mr. Noel Emmanuel Jack into this conversation, because apart from the cryptocurrency angle, he also has another perspective that he tends to bring to bear. Mr. Noel Emmanuel Jack, pleasant evening to you, sir. Would you please give us your take as it relates to bubbles and the comments made by Muriel that a bubble once started is going to end up bursting, and the bursting is really the last part of the cycle. Dr. KDs, as I like to call him, talked about positioning yourself. What comments, what feedback, what is your take on what has been shared thus far as it relates to bubbles? Okay. Doesn't appear that.
While Noel is trying to probably sort out his
Sure.
audio, I want to jump in with something that Katie spoke about, because in terms of the looking at the bubbles and managing ourselves, because we have to manage our personal economy, is I want to agree with we have to look at what is happening, avoid going to debt, and hold on to savings. It's about also managing our personal risk levels. And that happens if we diversify. We're talking about the market, where you can make money, whether it's bullish or bearish. And we have to be cognizant of what we are in terms of managing a portfolio and being diverse. So sometimes, risky, non-averse risk investors may want to do the double positive and have high risk, high investment, high risk model. But in terms of this issue is that you want to have a portfolio so that you're able to manage your riskiness, and that is key in this time. Yes, you would see that. And Dwayne said something also, and we taught it's in our OneAcademy in terms of learning something new. And this period that we are in here, if we have not positioned ourselves to learn something new during this COVID period, then we will be pushing our own self, our own economic self, because we have to take responsibility for that backward. So avoid debt. Look at managing your risk. Do not risk your investment do not venture into risky investments. Make sure you have some savings, some liquidity, and things like that, so you're not trapped when a bubble pops.
So, Muriel, you've said a mouthful, from personal responsibility to learning something new to keeping some liquidity on hand. You've covered about several different areas that one can have a separate program on just by itself. So let me get someone else into that conversation to take this on. And that person is going to be Mr. Wayne Wilson. Wayne, coming from the financial realm, I think could and should have a similar mouthful to give to us this evening on some of the points that Muriel extracted out of this simple conversation, perhaps not so simple as it relates to bubbles. Mr. Wayne Wilson, sir, the floor is yours.
Good night, good evening. Thank you, Alvin. Good night again once to our panelists. It's amazing, a lot of what is extrapolated so far, that one of our main, I should say, stumbling blocks or even red flags should be what we do in our very everyday life. Um, we all know the function of our retail banks. It is to make money, right? Well, let's say currency. But many of us get tied up in their very, very complex advertising strategies, to the point that they speak to what we perceive that we need at this time. And our One Academy always speaks to prudence. Wayne alluded to that. So even though I'm jumping off of what Muriel said and what Wayne said, and even what Alvin shared in his first slide, I really want to get back to our One Academy and speak to people tonight about really paying attention to what is physically put before you in advertisements. Because a lot of time and money is spent into ensuring that these advertisements appeal to what you feel you need. And in fact, it actually appeals to what the people that are advertising need to get from you. So, it is a trap, basically. And I say a trap simply because the main thought, the main goal behind it is to actually give something to you that doesn't exist and make interest off of it. And that is a very powerful, a very powerful tool if you don't pay attention. But for those of us who really delve into our One Academy, we would understand that the simplest of everyday things that we do, like, making a list of what we spend daily and paying attention at end of the week to see actually what we spent our currency on and what we really wanted to achieve. 95% of the time, a lot of us are going to be, having an aha moment. For those who don't have the aha moment, just look back at your account and understand what a bubble actually creates, what is meant to create, and one of the underlying factors is simply this. We have control of our economy. Muriel Lizama just said that. Our economy is created by us. It's just that other companies, I'll put it that way, have their own economies that they wish to ensure that prospers. So we have to be very, very prudent, very careful, especially today where signs of the bubbles are popping up all around us, be it currency being attempted to be put into an electronic form and being told it's digital, and many other spheres. So I think I would stop there because many of our other panelists would have their thoughts to share. But my main thing I want to leave with us here is that our One Academy, in many cases, especially in the level one, warns us about being prudent, about structuring our own economies. So Alvin, I hand it back over to you. I pray that my 2 points have enlightened somebody.
And again, in masterful fashion, Wayne, we thank you very much for your contribution. And you've echoed the sentiments that Dwayne echoed in terms of positioning yourself. And you've built very creatively off of Muriel's input in terms of positioning and taking on board the information contained in the One Academy and making use of it for your own personal economy. And all of these are critical, very basic, and perhaps unattractive components. But yet it is the very basis, to use Dwayne Katie's term, for wealth and for wealth generation. And I think that is one of the key takeaways. So I would now like to invite Kester Beale. Given all that has been shared, Muriel talked about the bubbles bursting but that means that the bubble is already here, it's already in effect. And that by itself brings with it risks, and we can talk about risk after, systematic, unsystematic, etc. And then it was Dwayne who talked about positioning itself and prudence. And then it was Wayne who mentioned the fact that we are being advertised and that our own personal economies are of interest to those who spend a lot of time, money, and talent in creating arts to engender within us and to appeal to those three emotions: fear, hope, and greed. Kester, you take it off from there. What would you like to share as it relates to what has already been discussed, what has already been commented on in terms of bubbles? What would you like to share with the community this evening?
Greetings, Mr. Morton,
Greetings
host
to
of
you,
the
sir.
meeting,
Loud and
Greetings,
clear.
sir.
and all my colleagues here on this OneAcademy call. I would like to allude to the mother of all bubbles. We pay attention to the small bubbles. Some may be big, but the ultimate bubble is debt-based currency. That is the mother of all bubbles. The amount of currency printed, the debt will always be a minimum of twice the amount. Because if I printed the very first dollar into existence and loaned it to you at the interest of $1, where do you get the next dollar to pay that interest? You have to wait for me to print it. And then you'll owe me for that as well. So this debt-based currency has us creating other destructive, I like to call them, bubbles that cause us to forget that currency itself is the mother of all bubbles. And so many bubbles have been, should I say, hidden around the world. Many people don't realize when Scotiabank withdrew itself from all the other Caribbean islands, the reason was there was a housing bubble similar to 2008 occurring in Canada. And because Scotiabank did not have the resources to maintain themselves, they had to withdraw from the other Caribbean islands. So bubble in itself is intrinsic to our currency system. And we are manipulated in all types of ways. As one of my colleagues said, advertising, we are manipulated every which way. And it is incumbent on ourselves not simply to make prudent decisions by ensuring that we do our due diligence. It is incumbent on us to steer at your decision. Watch it. As Fred Sanford used to say, if it moves on the plate, don't eat it. We have to pay so much attention, even after you have finished your due diligence. Watch it a little while longer. Because one errant move is all it takes, and it's all the banksters require. Their objective is to take us down one by one. I say governments authorize the printing of fiat currency, and they want it all back. That's why all these taxes, all these different duties, etc., they want their currency back. And in reality, it's not their currency, because looking at currency around the world, right here in Trinidad and Tobago, on our currency does not say the government of Trinidad and Tobago. It says Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. And when you check in the phone book, Central Bank does not show up under the blue pages, the governmental blue pages. It's in the white pages. I won't explain why, but I will pause there. Thank you.
We appreciate the additional component threads that you bring to bear in this discussion, Mr. Beale. And what we are seeing and coming out of this conversation is the role of money printing that also spurs on this business of bubbles. And it is well discussed and talked about in the OneAcademy Level 1. And we encourage people to get back in there and become acquainted, become okra with what is there. It will spur you into looking for additional information elsewhere that will build your own internal appreciation of the material and thus encourage you to make better decisions. I want to read a comment from Mr. Cujo, who posted in the chat. And he says that Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky spelled it out in their book, Manufacture of Consent, Mainstream Media's Role in lulling the people into unthinking obedience. Then he talks about absolutely, and it's insane. The OneAcademy will encourage you into thinking perhaps disobedience. And this is perhaps why it is not as supported in the sectors that we would think it should be. But that again is the subject of another discussion. We're now at 8:32 p.m. and we would like to make one final attempt to get Mr. Noel Emmanuel Jack into this conversation. I trust he has been able to resolve his microphone challenges. Brother Noel, please give us your take on this business of bubbles and all that has been shared this evening. We yield the floor to you. All right, he has apologized. His microphone still isn't working. So I think I'm going to perhaps ask each of us now to give some final comments as we seek to wrap up today's session, starting where we began with our educator, Muriel Lizam. Give us your final thoughts as we took an initial look at this conversation around bubbles.
I think it may sound simplistic, but in the simplest form, we have to pay attention, because as we talked about the bubble being formed already, and we have to look at what's happening politically, what's happening economically, we have to look at globally. We cannot, in this space, we cannot have blinders on. We have to pay attention to what is happening and mirror that by how we pay attention to the management of our resources in terms of our liquidity and our investment, but we have to pay attention to what's happening in the global and local space.
Right, so you are a big proponent of the whole thing about paying attention, just being engaged, just keeping your eyes open, looking for things that might be hiding in plain sight. And I think that's key, and that's something that we should always seek to do. Dr. C, final parting comments.
Yes, Alvin. Well, so much to say, so little time, but I'll try to get to the meat of it. Folks, the scripture says that as long as the world continues sowing and reaping, it will continue. So I encourage those of us who are developing our skills, whether it be educationally through the OneAcademy or if you have gone back to working with your hands, or whatever skill you might have, continue to develop it and continue to utilize it, hone it, make it the best that you can. So if whatever skills you have, if it's baking, cooking, dressmaking, gardening, what have you,
Mask making.
yes, mask making, hand sanitizer, whatever skill that you have. And who knows, just like the parable of the talents, when you explore one avenue, you're going to realize that you have a couple more gifts in you that you didn't know that you had. So dig deep, look within, find out what it is that the gifts that you've been given, and start utilizing those gifts.
Dr. C, again, thank you very much for the comments.
That's
So
paying
important.
attention, yeah.
Arising out of paying attention, we can find other skills that we may not yet be aware of, or that perhaps are underutilized, or maybe that we didn't think too much about. And by paying attention, by investing in them, by bringing them to the fore, we actually bring forth more talents for those of us that subscribe, of course, to biblical text. And the whole business of keeping our eyes open and looking for the opportunity that exists in crisis. And with that, I'm going to also ask Mr. Wayne Wilson to give us his final comments on this as part of this discussion this evening.
Thank you, Alvin. I think I want to summarize and end up with a quote from our founder, Dr. Ruja Ignatova. Learn today to lead tomorrow. We need to understand that the tools for our learning doesn't only come from a building or the internet. It comes from within us. Just as Dwayne just said, we have untapped skills, but one of the main things we need to understand is that in untapping those skills, we have the innate ability to not only pursue, but to endure. Many times we give up too early. We look at a simple function or even a simple, how should I put it, skill we have and say it won't contribute. I want to say to all of us tonight that one woman's vision today has touched so many lives around this world that our OneAcademy is not simplistic or simple as we would look at what happens around us today. It delves into every aspect of our life. We just need to understand when we get into it, much of what we have just discussed is explained, and many times it's overlooked. So in closing, I want to say, most of all, learn today so that we can lead tomorrow. Thank you, Al.
And again, very powerful comments there made by Wayne Wilson. It reminds me of a quote from Margaret Mead, I believe, who says that to the world you may only be one person, but to one person you may be the world. And just by paying attention, even if it is to making the observation that perhaps you give up too quickly, and just like Russell Conwell, your acres of diamonds were within feet of that last shovel, you may be similarly disposed in this time. Thanks very much, Wayne. We leave the final closing comment to Mr. Kester Beale. Please grace us with your parting comments on this topic of bubbles and this albeit very introductory discussion that we've had here this evening.
Greetings again. I would like to touch on something that Wayne Wilson mentioned, not in his closing, but in his main body of his speech. Paying attention to your expenses, to leaks, to potential growth. If you don't know there's a problem, you cannot solve it. you need to look at it. And I'm saying this from experience, and I should say somewhat recent experience. Understanding your situation properly is also due diligence. Being careful, knowing simple things like gas consumption, knowing simple things, because gas is not a simple thing anymore. And it appears that it will be getting worse. It looks like it's a bubble on its own that is forming. So understanding your inflows, outflows, in terms of your financial situation is a key area to being able to make proper decisions when investment comes along, because you understand your scenario so well that you can tell in your scenario, this opportunity or that opportunity might not work. So you can sift through with such a fine sift that you'll always be on target. And I leave it one of my personal sayings I had from a long time ago. It is better to know what not to do. For in knowing what not to do, you will never stumble into an error. You will only stumble into learning scenarios. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you again, Kester Beale. Your comments provoked a couple of things in my mind. One of which is John Maxwell's comment about vision leaks. And basically his commentary there is that a vision that is not communicated consistently, understood, and driven throughout the layers of leadership eventually leaks. And what happens is what is communicated at the top is not translated and executed elsewhere. And in like manner, the vision of Dr. Ruja, for those of us who do not embrace it, it will eventually leak throughout our hands and out of ourselves. And then what will happen is we will not see the benefits as encapsulated by mantra, learning today so that we can lead tomorrow. And we thank you very much, Kester, for that. It is now 8:43 p.m. We want to thank our distinguished panel of experts, if I may say so, for contributing to this introductory discussion on bubbles. We probably have to have several more parts as we explore the aspects of the phenomena. Muriel Izama, Wayne Wilson, Dwayne Cadiz, and Kester Beale. We do apologize for not having Noel Emmanuel Jack, who would have also brought considerable import to this discussion, but he had some unavoidable technical challenges, and we look forward to his contribution at the next appointed opportunity. I would now like to turn control to our admin for this evening's session. Thank you very much for the privilege of hosting, and it's back over to you, Madam Admin Host, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think it may not have been queued up, so we could just bid each other adieu.
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 Listen,
Farewell.
follow the OneAcademy. Learn today, lead tomorrow.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Night all.
Together for more.
Bye,
Together for
everyone.
more.
Together for more.
For sure.
Bye-bye.
Have a great evening, guys. Bye.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you. Very well done, gentlemen.